Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the preview for Manchester United against Everton. It's a big game for both clubs. I'm joined by John Shin. How you doing, John? You all right?
I'm good.
It's been a while.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back. And I'm joined as well by Matt Jones from the Blue Room. How you doing, Matt?
Been better, mate, to be honest. But
been better. You may notice from the Blue Room and from the accent there, John is an Everton fan. We'll be getting all the inside scoop on Everton's current situation, and it is a bit of a situation, isn't it? We'll be getting that as we go through the preview. Get your likes in, hit the subscribe button as well. But let's first of all start off with a bit of Manchester United. I think this is going to be a show talking a bit about managers for both clubs. But I'll start with you, John. In the last sort of 24, 48 hours, it looks as though Erik ten Hag is set to become the next Manchester United manager at the end of the season. Now, these players knew we were going to be getting a new manager at the end of the season. But do you think this news could distract them going into the game at the weekend? Because whilst they knew it, it's still a big sort of change at the club that is going to be coming, and it looks like we know who it's going to be.
I think in an ideal setting, yes, it should affect the players because at the end of the day, if these players have a future, if they want a future at Manchester United, they have to impress the new boss coming into the next season. And if every game going forward is an opportunity for them to do so, then of course it's going to impact them mentally. It's going to impact them in ways, that is going to affect their future at Manchester United. That's obvious. However, this season, Manchester United have just been all over the place with respect to consistency, with respect to the ability for them to showcase whatever ability they have. So I'm not really sure it's going to change. And look, I'm one of the most optimistic guys you guys will ever find. But I think, from a realistic standpoint, given what we've been seeing throughout the entirety of the season, I don't think it'll change too much in terms of how they're going to approach their personal individual gameplay.
Yeah, it's like we've tried everything at this point. I remember like being at school, I was kind of not like a really naughty kid, but just always getting in bits of trouble, always on report, always ringing mum. And it's like my mum tried everything to get me to be better at school. It's like, I'll just give you cash if you're good. I'll be nasty to you if you're bad. I'll be nice to you if you're good. I'll do everything I can. And nothing worked. And that's what it feels like with these players. It's like, we'll give you Jose. He's really hard on you. If you're not good, you'll know about it. That didn't work. All right, we'll give you Ole. He's really nice to you. When you are good, there's an arm around the shoulder there for you. That hasn't worked. And now we'll go with the disciplinarian in Ralph Rangnick. That's not working either. Like you said, I can't imagine anything really turning it around this season. But hopefully, we're up against a team that is also really struggling. United in 7th, Everton in 17th. Matt, we're talking about new managers here. Frank Lampard's coming at Everton. Not really had the effect that you would have hoped. What just sort of sum up the current situation at Everton, because it's one of those things that it's almost unbelievable looking from the outside. A team that is so commonly a top half team, challenging for Europe, and now it's struggling to stay in the Premier League. What has gone wrong this season for Everton?
I think it's to see what's gone wrong this season. You've got to look back over the last 6 years, really. Everton have basically been begging. I'm not going to bore everyone by going through it.
Yeah.
But Everton have basically been begging for this by the way in which they've been run. And they've been run in a cataclysmically bad way by people at the top of the football club who make short-term decisions, who make bad decisions, who aren't really capable of putting any kind of long-term plans in place. And I think that Everton are where they are because of that. And, you look at these players, you look at the managers we've had in Rafael Benitez and now Frank Lampard, and they are symptoms of a greater malaise that's engulfed the football club. And now we're in a position, you can probably hear me puppy there whinging about it as well. She's not happy. As you can,
she's not happy either, is she?
But it's, they're in this situation because of what the things that have happened over the last 6 years, effectively.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, I can't really believe what we're seeing with Everton. And there's almost like an idle fascination with it where you think, how does this team that is so often a top half team, a top 8 team, just sinking and sinking and sinking? And the game, as we record last night against Burnley, that was not necessarily a must-win game because you're still ahead of them in the table. But when you look at the fixtures coming up, you've got, I think after today, you've got Leicester twice, you've got obviously United, and you've got Chelsea and Liverpool as well as your next sort of 5 or 6 games. That's a very difficult run to kind of overcome, isn't it? I think Burnley have got Norwich at the weekend.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah,
it's brutal. But it's again, Everton have known about this situation for a while. We've known that the run-in is going to be really difficult. The one positive thing you could say is that they've taken some of the most recent points against the better sides. They went to Chelsea and got a point. They beat Arsenal at home as well. So they got a draw against Tottenham. So they've done okay at times, but it just feels like you said, that the result on Wednesday against Burnley was such a gut punch. If they just turned up and got beat 2-0 and were pretty woeful, I think it probably would have been better than losing in that way, in the manner they actually did, because everyone's just so flat and deflated today, and is sort of expecting it now. And the atmosphere's been quite good at Goodison recently. People have sort of left the grievances with the football club at the door, going through the turnstiles, and have tried to get behind this shower that we've got on the pitch at the moment. But it just feels like Wednesday might have been one too many, and I'm not entirely sure that these players are going to be able to rely on those fans going to that well again for them at the weekend.
But it's tough, isn't it? So it could be worse, John. At least, I know United are struggling, but it's not a relegation struggle, at least at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised 4 or 5 years down the line if it keeps going the way it is. It could be. Let's get into predicted 11s then. John, I'll let you go first. What have you got for the weekend?
So I have a 4-2-3-1. I'm going to go David De Gea in that obvious answer. I got back four of Luke Shaw, Varane, Maguire, and Delo. We talked a little bit about Erik ten Hag before, and I think Erik ten Hag's one of his major problems is going to sort out this fullback situation, because we can't seem to figure out who we like better. I think Luke Shaw, Alex Telles, Diogo Dalot, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we're so hot and cold with respect to not just the fan base, but just entirety, the actual players themselves. The performances are just so up and down. It's so ridiculous how inconsistent we are from a fullback perspective. So I think Erik ten Hag's going to need to sort that out. But for now, I'm going to go Luke Shaw and Delo as our fullbacks here. I got a defensive midfield of Fred and McTominay. I was trying to figure out where I could squeeze Pogba in here. I kind of was hoping maybe I'd like to squeeze Pogba in a midfield, or maybe a left of a 3 in the 4-2-3-1 shape, but I don't see Pogba starting, especially with all the stuff going around with respect to his contract. So Fred, McTominay in the 2, the holding 2 with Sancho on the left. I got Elanga on the right. I got Bruno down the middle as the 10 with CR7 up top. I think Elanga. I think Elanga is going to look back at his performance, that whole tackle with Rashford. It was one of those mistakes where it's like, he's still a young lad, and it's just one of those things where I think he just needs to brush aside and just keep him moving going forward. So I think he's going to start. I think he's been one of the more brighter things for Manchester United fans to expect and observe. So I'd like to see Elanga start, and of course Sancho. That's for me. Sancho's been my favorite player this season, so I got Sancho on the left and Bruno, of course.
Yeah, I do like Elanga. I'll go on to my team because I don't have Elanga in there, but mostly because I feel like at some point we're just asking too much of a lad who, hadn't really played for United up until about 2 months ago, and now is expected to play every week. It just worries me a little bit, week after week after week, we rely on him, and hopefully we can get the best out of Rashford at some point. So I've gone De Gea, Dalot, Maguire, Varane, and Telles. And I have gone for that midfield 3 of Pogba, Fred, and Bruno. That sort of 4-3-3 that we've seen under Rangnick at times. I think that's when we look our best going forward, when we've got both of Bruno and Pogba on the pitch. Although I agree with the sort of current contract points with Pogba, I'm not sure I'd necessarily pick him, but I think Rangnick does seem to like to. And then I've gone Sancho on the right. I've put Rashford on the left for the reason I mentioned before, with Ronaldo up front. I just think at some point we need Marcus Rashford back. We can't just resign ourselves to the fact that he's not a footballer anymore and he just sits on the bench no matter what. We played 2 midfielders up front the other day because Rashford's so bad at the moment. But, and again, no offence to Everton whatsoever, but these are the sorts of games where it's at home against a side that is really struggling at the moment. Marcus Rashford has to be able to play at some point, and for me, this has to be it. I won't obviously ask for a predicted 11 for United, Matt, but what sort of, what worries you about this United squad, if anything? We're obviously not at our best at the moment, but is there something in particular where you think that's the danger when you're playing against Manchester United?
Oh, everywhere. Every player you've mentioned there will probably be able to hurt Everton because they are that bad at the moment. It's obviously the attack, isn't it? If you look at Everton's defence in recent weeks, it's been utterly shambolic, and they've been leaking goals, can't defend set pieces, they can't clear the ball out of the box like we saw with Ben Godfrey last night. They give it away cheaply in midfield. So I imagine United will have a lot of joy in that area. And, the prospect of someone like Ronaldo doing those little movements in the box and getting away from people like Ben Godfrey and Mason Holgate and Michael Keane, I suspect they'll have a bit of a field day from that point of view. Which means Everton are probably going to have to score a couple of goals if they want to get anything out of this game. And that's not a part of the attack that's working really well for us either. With Richarlison scored 2 penalties last night. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been honkingly bad recently. So the United defence as well. Maguire's obviously had a bit of a ropey time recently, hasn't he? With some of the sticks for England, although United fans got behind him last week, which you'd expect. But him and Varane, I imagine, you'd expect them to get the better of someone like the way Dominic Calvert-Lewin's playing at the moment. So, I said I put on Twitter the other week that I think United at the moment are a bit of they're basically like Everton in terms of the structural issues. They've got no real pattern of play. They don't really seem to have the right manager, but they've just got loads of better players. And when you've got loads of better players, you can have all those structural problems and still get by in games, and you can draw at home to Leicester. You can win the odd game here and there. Everton don't have that luxury of having world-class talents that's just poorly managed and poorly set up. So I sort of feel like that's where we're at the moment. You'll see 2 teams on Saturday that have got similar issues in terms of the structure, in terms of the way that the coach, in terms of the confidence issues, but United have just got a lot better talent in their 11.
Yeah, and hopefully for us, obviously, that'll be enough to carry us through. Just on Everton a little bit more then, because the Lampard thing is obviously, I think he was compared a lot to Solskjaer when he was at Chelsea and Solskjaer was at United. Both former players who maybe didn't quite have the experience you would expect to get the job they got. Both of them compared to each other constantly. And then as soon as Ole leaves, Man United, he's not linked with any sort of top jobs currently. I think, Lampard turned down Watford and then got the Everton job afterwards, which, I know you're not doing well, but Everton's a big team in the Premier League. Are you surprised he got that job? Do you think he's done enough in his career to have earned what was not just the Everton job anyway, which is a big job, but the biggest it's been in a long time? Because if he gets this wrong, you end up in the Championship. Have you been happy with Lampard, and were you surprised he got the job in the first place?
I'm not necessarily surprised that he got the job, because I think Everton's decision makers are very narrow-minded, and I think ultimately as well, when you're in a situation where the team's playing so poorly and you sack a manager mid-season, your pool of options becomes smaller and smaller, doesn't it? At the end of the day, and listen, there are people out there I would have liked Everton to have gone and approach. Someone like Lucien Favre, Kovac was available as well. I think those were options that I think Everton probably could have gone and got at that point. But instead, they seem to narrow it down to this sort of crazy X Factor sort of 3-man shortlist with Duncan Ferguson, Vitor Pereira, and Frank Lampard. And of the 3 candidates, I think a lot of people wanted Lampard, not necessarily because they think he's an amazing manager, but probably because he was the best of the 3 there. So I don't think he's necessarily done a good job, but Everton is set up in a way where it's almost impossible for the managers to do well, because the players have got no character. A lot of them haven't got much ability. What's going on at the top of the football club as well? The owner interferes, and we signed Anwar El Ghazi in January effectively because his agent or the person that brokered the deal is mates with Farhad Moshiri, and that lad's played 11 minutes of football for Everton. So Lampard's effectively had a couple of players foisted on him. There's players in that squad that have got no heart, no bottle, no real ability. And I think, how do you manage a group of players like that? Can anyone come in? I could sit here now and say I don't think he's done a necessarily good job, but you'd have to be some managers to get a tune out of this lot, I'll tell you that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, you can almost swap the word Lampard for the word Rangnick in the last sort of 3 or 4 sentences you said there about how obviously I don't think it's quite as bad at United in terms of owners picking players because they know the agent, but it is basically how can you get the best out of these players? The players aren't quite good enough, the way that the owners ran, the way the structure, and like you said before, there are a lot of comparisons at the minute between Everton and United. And this video has basically become who's more annoyed at their club, United fans or Everton fans, which I quite like actually, because, what more can we do? Let's go around and do some score predictions then. I think I don't know if we'll dare predict that Everton will win. So you might win on the old whose club is more badly run. But I'll go with you, John, first. What are you thinking?
Just before I give my score prediction, I think Manchester United over this season, we've had situations where we thought that this is gonna be a walk in the park. We're gonna do well. We're gonna smash them, and then we absolutely capitulate. And one of the reasons why I didn't select Rashford is because I feel like if Everton were given presented the opportunity to sort of go against the player that was, for instance, somebody that's having a difficult season like Marcus Rashford, I felt like that would have just caused us more problems. But I think Everton. I don't think that it'll be that easy. They have, like we were talking about, they have a really difficult run in. I think there's going to be an opportunity for Everton to try and take something here. I really like Richarlison. I think Richarlison is a player that if Lampard or whoever is here next season for Everton, if they can get the best out of him, I think they'll be able to do something serious with somebody like Richarlison. But I don't want to predict a draw. It's so annoying. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I'll go for a 2-1 win.
Well done. It's hard though, isn't it? And like you said, every time you think, no, we'll win this, we draw or we drop points against teams that are really struggling. And it's something United have done for a long time. So I'll go next. My dad messaged me last night. He was watching the Everton game and he texted me and said, if you're a betting man, you'd put 25 quid on Everton to beat United on Saturday, because this is what United do. We play against the teams that are...
Tell them to save it for the national. Tell them to save it for the national.
Exactly. Maybe you should.
Yeah, you probably get more value for money.
Just cannot lose to these teams. Like Sheffield United was a perfect example last season, and then Everton actually a couple of weeks later, where we were flying. We were top of the league, I think, or just very close to City in the league last season, and we played Sheffield United, bottom of the table. I think they had like 11 points or something. No way we can lose, and we lost to them. And I just worry that there might be a bit of that with Everton, especially how fragile we are at the moment. I am going to predict a win, though, because I'm a United fan and I'm slightly delusional. I'm going to go 2-0 United, but I think it is going to be much more difficult than, the form of Everton would suggest. What are you thinking, Matt? Give me a score prediction.
Part of me thinks that Goodison will be up for it and he'll rally the players and you might be able to get a point. But listening to you lads rattle off the attacking talent that United have got and the prospect of them going up against our back four, I think even predicting with me head, probably 3-1 United. I'd say. I just can't see our ramshackle defence keeping out players of that talent. Regardless of how United have got structural issues and midfield doesn't quite work. If you give Sancho and Rashford and Ronaldo and Fernandes, and Pogba enough of the ball in the final third, Everton will not only give them time and accommodate them, but they'll make their own mistakes as well. So unfortunately, I can't see anything over the United win from an Everton perspective, but here's hoping I'm wrong.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Matt, for coming on the show. Where can people find you?
Yeah, at the Blue Room EFC on Twitter. Obviously, very doom and gloom on there at the moment, but some people like that kind of thing. So, if you want to hear a few lads and lasses lose their minds every other day about Everton, then come and have a listen.
And the thing is, worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, you get relegated. You probably win like 38 games next season. So it might be the best season of your life coming up.
Well, I don't know if you saw Everton's accounts last week. So they've lost £400 million or close to that in the last 3 years. So the worry is that if they go down, there might not be a football club left to support in the near future.
Okay, well, maybe I'll take that last comment back then. But, you might have a good championship run either way. I'm only joking. I think you'll probably stay up. John, where can people find you, mate?
Come find me on Twitter. Absolutely being an absolute clown on Twitter at Mr. John Shin.
Mr. John Shin, thank you very much for joining us home. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit the join button. We do have memberships. You get extra content, extra videos. You get a members-only chat and discount on merch as well. So hit that if you haven't already. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a bit.